stop missing fish on the chatterbait or the bladed jig, whichever you want to call it. There's a couple reasons why you're likely missing bites and missing fish on this particular type of lure, the bladed jig. We're going to talk about those two reasons. Let's get into it in today's video. It's not a 3, it's a monster of a fish. Good fish right there. All right, what's happening, guys? My name is Jeremy. This is Fishing LoneStar. I want to talk today about bladed jigs, chatterbaits, and a couple things I've learned over time through myself and even through other people that I fish with as to why you're likely missing bites. And it comes down to your rod and your hook set, but it also comes down to the way the bait and the lure is designed, and probably something you haven't really thought about before. So let's talk about the bladed jig, right? This is a jackhammer. Now the other one that I use a lot of is the Thunder Cricket, right? So either one of these are designed the same way, okay? So let's talk about the way they're designed and why you're likely missing bites because of the way this is designed and how your rod and your hook set plays into it. All right, so first let's talk about this. So the lure itself, a bladed jig, has a blade in front, obviously an exposed hook in the back, but the blade almost serves as a bit of a weed guard for this hook. Now you'll notice if I bend this blade back, it comes very close to touching, but we're probably still about 1/3 of an inch away from the back. Let's see how close the Thunder Cricket gets. All right, so the Thunder Cricket is about the same distance if I push this hook back. And let me grab one of the stealth blades too. All right, so here's the stealth blade. And if we look at the stealth blade, it's a little bit further from the hook, maybe 1/2 an inch or so, but still you kind of see a little bit of how far that blade is from the hook. But let's talk about why that matters. All right, so when you're fishing this bladed jig, right, this blade in front is going to vibrate back and forth. Actually, let me make the right movement, back and forth like this, right? And that's what causes the vibration. Fish can feel it, fish can sense that, and they come and just devour these things. But let's talk about, though, when a fish comes to bite it, unless they just completely miss this blade and grab the hook, they're likely engulfing it, right? And their lip is covering that blade right there. Now, if you immediately feel that and go to set the hook really hard, guess what's going to happen? You're going to, because the line is attached right here to the blade, look what happens when I pull on it. See how it has that upward movement? So if a fish bites, you set the hook really hard, it's going to push the fish's mouth open and out comes the hook without catching the fish. I've seen it happen so many times with guys who were using rods who are too stiff, too sensitive, and they have too hard of a hook set. So let's talk about the rods that I use and the hook set that I use and how that really helps you a lot with your hookup ratio with bladed jigs. And even if you don't have these particular type of rods, we'll talk about the hook set, which will help solve for that, right? So let's break it down. All right, now, I'm gonna share this particular type of rod with you, but I want you to know that Brett Height, who helps design the jackhammer, okay, who has won hundreds of thousands of dollars in tournament fishing, Brett Height, talks about using a fiberglass rod, okay? So this is not just me saying this. This is something I've learned from listening to professional anglers talk and present on this. So the rod that I use is a TFO 7.4 medium heavy moderate action. The moderate action really talks about the bend in the rod. You see how much give there is here? And also the fact that it's a fiberglass rod means it's going to be less sensitive as your traditional composite rods. So let's take a look at one of those. This is a 7.4 cranking rod, okay? It's also moderate action. You'll notice the bend here is very similar to your fiberglass rod. So both of these are the same power and action. However, this one is a composite rod compared to a fiberglass rod, okay? Now let me hold these up side by side and look at the difference in the width of these two in terms of the blank, right? The fiberglass rod is way thicker. This one's way more dense and thinner, right? So your composite rods that are more dense and thinner are also more sensitive, okay? So when you immediately feel that bite, your reaction is going to be to set the hook. Now I'll come back to the hook set in a moment, but that's one of the main reasons why a fiberglass rod, in my opinion, is really good for chatterbaits, is because it helps dampen the feeling a little bit so you don't feel it right away. It's not quite as sensitive. And that half second or split second makes a big difference. Sorry, that's what I was trying to say. Makes a whole big difference in that blade when the fish bites it, sliding into the fish's mouth. Let me show you. So fish comes up, bites the lure. You need that blade to fall and the fish's mouth to slide back. Then you set the hook and the fish's mouth is already caught here, okay? So if you set the hook right away, you're gonna blow the fish's mouth open. If even a split second further, the blade slides past the fish's mouth and then you set the hook, then you've got them, right? That's when you're gonna catch them. So having a fiberglass rod makes a big difference in the feeling, being a little less sensitive, and therefore allowing you to hook more fish. A quick plug for this particular rod. Most fiberglass rods, people don't like them because they're heavy. This one is under 5 ounces, super light, and is also about $140 to $150, whereas most fiberglass rods are $200 plus. And you're not gonna beat the warranty that TFO provides. So I would absolutely tell you to check out this rod. We'll leave a link below, but the TFO fiberglass rod, 7.4 medium heavy moderate action, is perfect. But let's say you don't have a fiberglass rod. What can you do about that? Well, whether you're fishing with a fiberglass rod or a normal composite rod, your hook set makes a big difference as well. So yes, you do want to wait a split second if you're using a more sensitive rod to allow the fish, the lure to kind of slide back, or to slide into the fish's mouth, that blade to come forward a little bit before you set the hook. You're going to catch more fish. And having a sensitive rod, I'm telling you, your immediate reaction is just to set the hook. You almost want to say, like, not even 1,001, probably like 1,000, like half a second. And then instead of a strong hook set, it's just a sweep and lean. Right? All you're doing is just sweeping and leaning the opposite direction and then reeling into it. Okay, it's almost like a slow sweep instead of a hard hook set. So if you're using a composite rod, wait a split second before setting the hook when you feel the chatterbait bite, and then it's a sweep. Sorry, I just hit my rod tip on my car. But it's a slow sweep, all right? And that's how you're gonna set the hook and catch more fish with a bladed jig. Now let's talk about one more benefit to a composite rod versus a fiberglass rod with a bladed jig. And this goes for a lipless crankbait as well. One other benefit with a composite rod is they're usually a little more stiff than a fiberglass rod, even the exact same 7.4 medium heavy moderate action. The composite rod is gonna be a little bit more stiffer, and it's a little more sensitive. Where that does matter is if you're fishing in and around grass. Okay, so in and around grass, some people don't like the fiberglass rod as much because they can't feel when the chatterbait tips the grass, or when a lipless crank hits the tip of the grass. They would rather use a composite rod for that because you can feel it more. So for that reason, I do keep both of these on the deck of my boat. And at different times and different bodies of water, I will switch up which one I'm throwing a chatterbait on and which one I'm throwing a lipless crank on, depending on if I'm throwing it in and around a lot of grass, or if I'm fishing a little bit more open water with some sparse grass. So that's just one difference as well, as to how I actually use both of these for both a lipless crank and a chatterbait to be effective in and around different types of cover and structure. The final two components before we wrap up and close, this is actually on my other setup here, is your reel. All right, so the reel, I always like a gear ratio of 7.5 to 1. You can go a little bit faster, you can go a little bit slower. 7.5 to 1 seems to be the right speed for me, all right, for me and how I fish the bladed jig. But if you like to fish it slower, go to like a 6.8 or 6.5. If you like to fish it faster, go to an 8.3 to 1, etc. 8.3 to 1 is a little bit too fast for me. I feel like I'm burning it a ton. But if you're in a situation where you want to burn a chatterbait, step up in your gear ratio to an 8.3 to 1. And the line I like to use is 17-pound fluorocarbon. Some guys like 14. I don't fish around a lot of clear water, so I'm going to go as heavy a line as I can and get away with. And for me, that's 17-pound fluorocarbon. But that lose reel, this is the Tournament MP. This is one I use. I've used this for a couple of years now on my chatterbait setup, and it has done great. So whether you're fishing the Thunder Cricket or the jackhammer, make sure you are taking those things into consideration, allowing the blade to clear the fish's mouth before setting the hook, have a little bit of delay in your hook set, and a long sweeping motion, and I promise you, you'll catch more fish on the bladed jig. All right, guys, appreciate you checking out this video. We've got a couple more coming that are unboxing videos. I've got a lot of tackle and gear that I want to show you that's all new. Some of it is new for 2023. Some of it's just new to me. Either way, I want to talk about why I picked it up and where I'm going to apply it in my fishing effort. So stay tuned for that. And for Nobody Told You Today, God loves you, and so do I. Peace out.